All right. All right, we're in business. Welcome, welcome everybody. We're going to start natural farming swine production today. I'm going to go over, I think it's about 10 or 11 slides, just kind of going over an introduction of the system. And then I typically do a nice little hand-drawn diagram right up here and walk you through the layering of the big system that we've developed in UH. And then we'll go up on the field trip and check out the piggery up in Kurdistan. Okay? To start off with, there it is. Hey, technology, look at that. Can you see that okay, or do I need to turn these lights off? We're okay? All right. I'm going to talk a little bit first about current production systems in Hawaii. Maybe talk a little bit about yourself first. What experience you guys have in pigs, in livestock cultivation in Hawaii, and then we'll get into this. You guys want to start?
My name's Charles Cosgrove. I'm from the Kapawa Ranch, which is up in North Kohala. We're primarily a cow-calf operation. We run about 2,000 mother cows. Monty Richards owns the ranch, and he has always been interested in diversification, whether it's alternate energy or greenhouses. And so we're kind of exploring opportunities with pigs. And,
Okay.
we're interested in the chickens. We're going to be here a couple of weeks. Rescheduled. I don't know much about it, not pigs.
Cool.
So I'm an empty sponge.
Yeah, but you've worked with livestock a long time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I know plenty about cows.
Okay. Okay.
Nothing about pigs.
All right. They're just like smaller, and you could put them in a house. About the same thing. Maybe not, but yeah. Okay. Wonderful. Wonderful. And then
I'm Benji. I'm with Charles. I actually grew up in Georgia on a pig farm.
nice.
How many? We had about 120 sows. We transitioned from putting them farrow in the swamp in the forest to a confinement farrowing house with a lagoon. And I was the one that had to go in and snip needle teeth, nails, vaccinate, clean out the farrowing house. But here to learn about this method of raising and producing pigs.
Happy pig.
Happy pigs.
As opposed to one swallowing in swamps.
Well,
which isn't so bad, but it's a cement floor. Yeah.
Ours, sows love to go in the farrowing
Yeah.
crate
Yeah.
because they got attention, well cared for. We rotated them out as quickly as possible. We mainly use the farrowing crates just so they didn't crush their baby pigs.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a fairly understanding of that method of producing pork. But this I'm very interested in. I've seen the piggery with Michael Duponte.
Okay.
Could not believe that it didn't smell.
Okay.
I still am in denial of that.
You'll see it again today.
So I'm very, very interested in this.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. And it really it comes down to is just a sense of biology and using biology as a waste management system.
Mhm.
Any experience?
Not for production, but.
This is Charlotte, guys.
This is, I'm sorry, I'm Charlotte. But I spent summers with Grandma, and with Grandma, she had pigs, and that was confined to a pen.
Cement
And they
floor
were
or soil floor?
Soil,
Okay.
they had every fruit that you can imagine, fed, and she also graded them. But they came and went. She had a big piece of property. They came and went. They were in the pen if they wanted to be. They went out
free range.
furrowing in the streams and wherever. And then when she hit the pot, they all came home.
And how many?
Well, about a dozen.
Okay.
And then when she needed somebody to, when she sold one, someone would come and help her with it, loading and stuff like that. So
She didn't do any slaughtering or anything?
not at her place.
Okay.
She sold the pig.
Okay.
Chris Hardenbrook, good morning. I don't have any experience with pigs.
Cool. Cats, dogs?
Cats and dogs, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Not too different.
yeah, chickens, plenty.
Cool.
But, pigs, my wife thinks they're awfully cute and wants to have one for a pet.
Ah.
And on the other hand, on a farm, that's fine. One one pig is a pet, but you gotta allow in your mind that the rest of them are going off the market.
Yeah.
I just wanna learn how to do it right.
I know people that have one pig in this system. The one pig has its own pen in this system, happiest pig in the whole world,
Yeah,
you know.
will be
And,
forever.
and they're the pet, and she's never gonna eat the thing,
Yeah.
and it's just she only does it for the waste management system. So, so thank you.
Who's that, Kim?
Yeah. She will eat it eventually, but I think it's almost 3 years old.
When
now.
it's at the mutton stage.
Right. It's not like delicious at this point. So we'll talk a little bit about, I'm James Rushing. I do natural farming education classes for Hawaii Community College. I've been dealing with natural farming for about 3 years. I'm also a researcher in it. I think I'm the only one on the island who does research on this as far as like scientific laboratory stuff. So I do analysis of the materials and figure out what's in it and how it behaves, and I do biological assay and that kind of stuff of this, where a lot of the natural farmers in the education programs that are on the island kind of focus on how to make the materials and not really an explanation of why. I focus on as much as I can on the microbial presence, what it does, and the importance of it. So today I'll talk a little bit about current production systems that they are in Hawaii. I'll talk a little bit about the piggery plans, and then we'll just go on the field trip. Current systems, maybe this look familiar. Current systems that are being used in Hawaii, they include cement floor pens. These are for larger production areas. On Oahu and on Kauai, they have cement floors. Very, very small operations, nothing even that big. And then there's also cement and metal grate. There's the dry litter system, soil floor pens, which is illegal. And then free range, which has its regulations, and then natural farming, and I'll talk about each one of those real quick here. The cement floor, very typical of what you might see in Hawaii. Just something, a bunch of cinder blocks caging in the swine. There really is a limited to no waste management system for this, which just blows my mind because it's EPA okayed. Essentially, they want you to have a trough to have the effluents go away into some sort of holding facility or in some sort of holding facility for the material so that it can go through decomposition. A lot of the systems that have the cement floors don't have that trough. It literally just goes right out the back and it goes out on the land, okay? This is because there is no EPA regulation enforcement for this. There is some, let's say any, but they're stretched way too thin and there isn't anybody out there checking, plain and simple. I know people that have this system that has been set up since the 1940s and hasn't changed since, and they're just spraying it off in the back and they grow wonderful tomatoes out of the back of it. I mean, that's what they go for. Lots of odors, lots of insects. On a daily basis, if you don't get in there and clean it out and work with it, the insects and odors get out of hand. You have very, very confined pigs in this system, and our goal with natural farming, in addition to doing the waste management procedures properly, is to have happy pigs. And we feel that the physical and biological health, the digestive system, the mental health of the pig really has an effect on the quality of the meat. Not only that, but data is showing right now that we can get a growth rate of increase of almost 1/3, provided we give the right nutrients to the pigs and we give it the right environment where it's not stressed. You take the stress out of the environment. Sanitation and disease issues, certainly, if you're doing it improperly. And then it's probably the most common system used in Hawaii. Small to large scale piggeries use these systems. Usually, like I said, they're just cinder block cement floor systems that were put up anywhere between 50 to 25 years ago and just haven't changed since. The metal grates and cement, a little bit more sanitary than soil and then the cement alone. Very confined pigs, there's odors and insects in these. They do a pretty good job with these systems to having airflow. getting the air out, but usually uses fans or some sort of exhaust system, where the natural farming system has a specifically designed structure that allows for ideal airflow, and you don't have to have the ventilation systems.
It's the same kind of structure for chickens, right?
It's very similar, just on a much
Just the
larger
interior
scale.
furnishings are.
Right. It's the teetered roof,
Yeah.
and making sure that it's pointed in the right direction for crosswinds. Very expensive endeavor, but at the same time, EPA approved and more likely to get your product into higher end distributors and grocery stores if you have this type of system. Usually for large production systems, and of course I didn't get a link there, sorry about that. This is a CTAR write-up that I give you the website for. Just check it out on your own time, and it really is talking about this types of systems in Hawaii and how they're used. I don't know why it's not letting me link to it. I do apologize for that. Maybe if I try this. There you go. So these are the farrowing systems, just a write-up from CTAR talking about the flooring and using farrowing crates, as you were mentioning, typically used on the mainland. So plans for farrowing systems, different kinds, talking about flooring as well. And then nursery pens. Does that look familiar?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Looks expensive to me.
It is, it was.
Okay. All right. So on your own time, go ahead and check out this, and if you need to, print it out. I don't encourage this type of activity, so I'm just gonna move on. You have the dry litter system, okay? This is going to be typically cement floor with a lot of dry waste on the flooring. It's economical, and it's commonly used in Hawaii. It essentially has a waste management system because you are using organic material to absorb the urine and feces of the pig, and then you go around and gather that stuff up and you compost it, use it as an amendment.
Is that a sleeping piglet?
That is a sleeping piglet, yes. You tend to get a happier pig in here than a cement cell. And you get a little bit faster growth. And generally a more cleaner pig because you're in there cleaning out the feces pretty regularly. There are people that use this system and then use the lactic acid bacteria, which is an amendment we use in natural farming, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that. They use that on this system, and it seems to work. It seems to incorporate into the system really well. And the lactic acid bacteria is a solution that we make out of milk, and it's made from milk and sugar, and we use it to spray on our pens, in our natural farming pens, and what the lactic acid bacteria does is it competes for the nutrients that the odor-causing microorganisms are using. So feces and urine, what it does is it takes over the nutrients and moves those methanogens and those types of microorganisms that make those stinky smells, those sulfur-producing smells, moves them aside and says, hey, I'm getting in here instead, I'm stronger than you, blocks them away from the nutrients, those die off, and the smells then go away. So they will use this and spray it in there, and it works pretty well. And it simulates somewhat of a natural habitat, so you get a little bit happier pig than you would off of a cement cell, like I said. And here's another write-up as well from CTAR. Talking about, how's that better? All right. Talking about dry litter systems. Is that focused? I don't have my glasses on.
Looks a little fuzzy.
Let me see if I can. Better?
Yeah, that's a little bit.
Okay, there you go. Dry litter systems on small-scale piggery operations, written by Glenn Fukumoto, who I think still is an extension agent for it. Talking a little bit about the structure and how it's built over there on the right. the concept behind it. Essentially, it's using organic material to absorb the urine and feces. And any sort of adoption or implementation talks about how EPA did research projects on it and authorized it to be used in Hawaii. Other areas in the Western Pacific that use it, like Fiji. Any limitations that might be there? Limitations can be access to dry materials. In Hawaii, it might be pretty difficult to get consistently dry materials all the time. And then there's a plan right there. And you can access these plans through CTAR as well. So if you just have to get a hold of the extension office, the Komohana extension office over on Komohana Avenue, and they can provide you with these. I can't provide you with them because I'm not CTAR. They have those plans. And then how to, talks about how CTAR got involved and all that stuff, and where it's going, and be doing research on this as well in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. So we're trying to spread it all over the tropics as much as possible. That was until we developed this system. Not this system, this is ancient. The soil floor system. It's illegal, guys. You cannot do pigs on soil in Hawaii. Very, very illegal. Once again, no regulation enforcement. But just know that it can make you and your family very, very, very sick. You need to watch where you put this. So for instance, I went on to a consultation about a month ago on a farm, and they said they wanted to set up a natural farming piggery. And I said, okay, let's take a look at your piggery that you have now. It's essentially pallets in a circle and with a roof over top with a little pig in there. And they're just starting small, no big deal. And I said, and I turned around, and there was the water catchment tank. Right there. Literally 4 feet away from this soil floor piggery. And I'm going, oh my gosh. And they have tourists coming there and drinking this water. It's UV cleaned and filtered, but I mean, you just gotta be really careful with something like that. So I had to move it very, very quickly down the hill. But yeah, it can make people sick, so you gotta be really careful. It's environmentally damaging, the amount of waste materials that come off of this area. And not only that, but it can make your pig pretty sick.
But you're referring to confined soil floor.
Confined soil floor. We're not doing free range yet. But this is, literally in a tiny little pen, and it's slopping around in its own feces. I go to the Philippines, this is what you see. What they do is they eat their pigs much smaller before they have any issues with reproduction and getting sick in their pens. So this really is essentially no waste management system, hence why it's illegal. And then lots of odors and insects, and this is the most common system worldwide that is used, but definitely not in Hawaii. And then free range pigs, probably more what you're referring to. Simulating a natural habitat, certainly. There really isn't a waste management system still, because you got runoff. You have areas where the pigs will defecate in general, and then those become build-up areas of phosphates and nitrates and all that. And then groundwater leakage and all that stuff. So there's issues with that. It's in an open space, and a lot of people in Hawaii use feral pigs. They'll bring in feral pigs in, they pen them in, and they allow them to do free range within the pen. And then when they need new ones, they send out a female or a male, whatever one, and then they have the ones from the forest coming in. Higher market value for free range pigs, especially if you're certified organic, and EPA approved. So a little bit nicer system. What goes on here is the microorganisms in the environment generally do a pretty good job of breaking the material down. So there's not too much of a danger as compared to the soil floor, the confined soil floor.
I take it that they do their own slaughter. A place like Kalani won't take them.
They won't take a free range. Yeah. Most of those operations, except for the cement operations, most of those are sold to family and friends for most people that do production. There's people that do 25, 30, 40 pigs at a time, and they do nothing but selling to their Micronesian community or whatever it is that are totally outside of regulation or wholesaling. and are able to make plenty of money doing it. Like I said, no regulation enforcement. And then of course we got the natural farming system, which we're going to talk about today. It's a closed waste management system, no leakage, nothing's getting out. It is probably the most environmentally friendly system that we have in Hawaii. It's even better the fact that there is no odor, and when I say no odor, if there is any odor, it's because the natural farmer messed up, didn't do it right, or isn't on top of the system. No odor coming from the amount of indigenous microorganisms that are inside the system, and the biological diversity, because of so many different materials going into the deep litter system. Microorganisms generally will break down and work with one specific kind of material. So if we put multiple different kinds of material in here, we're going to have multiple different kinds of microorganisms that consume these different materials, causing more biological diversity and allowing us to harness their power, really. Little to no insects. I say no flies, because there's no flies. But of course you're going to have the creepy crawlies all around, and those are good. Those are going to be the ones help spreading the indigenous microorganisms around, cockroaches and all that good stuff. And actually it makes a wonderful food source for the pigs when they find it. Healthy, productive pigs in this environment. We really have happy pigs with smiles on their faces. You'll see that when we go to the piggery, and depending on if it's feeding time or not, they generally are very, very quiet, and they don't make screeching, hollering noises. Actually, a lot of times we'll bring people to the piggery, and we have a discussion outside of the piggery, and they don't even realize that we're standing 5 feet from the entrance of the piggery. They go, okay, where is it? And I turn right around and we're right inside. So they're generally very, very quiet. And then this is also EPA approved. Nailed it. 2 years ago, got it approved. Why is that amazing? No cement floor. It's a plastic sheet. All we're using is a plastic sheet and some wood, and you can make this system. We've been able to put 2 pigs in a pen and having the cost of the system be under $300.
Are there guidelines for that plastic sheet?
Yes.
A minimum, okay.
Yeah, there's a minimum, and I think it's 60 mil. Okay?
60. Wow.
60 mil, yeah. Now, it can be recycled. So, the plastics that the guys use for the greenhouses are typically 60 mil. So when you find somebody taking their hoop house down and changing their polyurethane, why don't you acquire that, put it on the inside, and you don't have to pay for it. Especially if it's a long hoop house and you're doing a long piggery, you can get an awful lot of material for free just knowing and networking. So that's how most people will do it. They'll get a hold of the greenhouse guy and know somebody that's taking them down. Okay, and let me show you a free publication that we have out that you can access. Or at least I thought I was going to. Here it is. The Natural Farming Concept, a new ecological and environmental waste management system for small family farms in Hawaii.
How do you get EPA approval? Do you invite them out?
Yeah, you got to invite them out, and they have to do a what do you call it? A environmental impact statement. So they'll put probes underneath it, and they'll do samples and soil samples and do cores all around it after an extended period of time of it being there, and then you get the approval. So it took many years. It has to be there and established and allow leakage if there is some, and then they go in and they take a look, and there was none. It talks about how this had come about through the Korean natural farming groups, and Mike will actually talk to you a little bit about how he heard about it. Master Cho had taught him all about that stuff, and just about, I think 6 years ago, he had learned about it, and within the last 4 years put up these systems. And I don't know the exact numbers that Mike's dealing with right now, but it's I know it's more than 60 piggeries right now on Big Island that are using the system. It talks about how to incorporate the different components.
Big piggeries? Sorry. Yeah.
I mean, big is relative because what's big in Hawaii? They're all small.
How big are they?
I'd say typically anywhere between 3 to 10 pigs per pen.
Right.
per piggery.
Per piggery.
And then there are operations and plans right now to doing 250 at a time with this one.
Wow.
And I think they're doing construction and laying foundation on that one. I don't know where that is. Talks about solar positioning. How is it important to put the structure in the right place based upon the sun and trade wind movement? Natural ventilation, that's the trade winds and the air movement. It talks a little bit about the split roof and allowing heat to escape. And then it talks a little bit about the deep litter and what to use. It talks a little bit about the basics of biochar as well, which is one of the components. And so there's a reference there for Josiah Hunt's write-up from 2000, or 2010, who is he produces biochar for farmers on the Big
Is
Island.
he still in production?
Yeah. I know he went through a divorce and kind of slowed down, and then I think he's getting back up again. Talking a little bit about the microorganisms and how they come into play. Typically for this system, we use microorganisms from lactic acid bacteria, like I had mentioned, and then also the indigenous microorganisms, the IMO4. Okay, so you guys you know what IMO4 is?
I do.
You do? Don't know what it is. So we had a class 2 weeks ago talking about how to produce this material, and what it is it's essentially like composting on steroids. We go out to the environment and we collect microorganisms on a massive scale. We grab leaves, we grab soil, we grab wood, things that are decomposing. We take those microorganisms and isolate them on a sterile media. We use rice. And the microorganisms jump from these sticks and logs onto our sterile media. We then ferment the rice, creating a condition that would not be conducive to most pathogens. We make an environment, when we ferment them, it's high in alcohol, high in sugars, and low in oxygen. And when we do that, we're trying to kick out any of the bad guys that might be in that original collection of microorganisms. And then we take that and we put it onto another sterile media on a large scale. So we'll usually use mill run or locally available materials, carbohydrate-like materials, and we make a large compost pile. This compost pile is a rich color. It's white and grays and has lots of fungi. When you stir it, spores just come billowing out of it. It's essentially just the most alive compost pile you've ever seen. So we take this material and we use it in this system. Why do we do that? We're trying to get indigenous microorganisms that have evolved in this specific area where the piggery is. They've evolved to exist and be tough guys. And so what we do is we take all of the microorganisms, the bad ones, the good ones, and everything in between. We put these materials through a gauntlet of conditions. So when we're done, we know we only have the big dogs, the ones we want. And so we add those back into the system. And I'll talk about that when I talk about the layering. So the IMO, very, very, very crucial to this system. IMO being indigenous microorganisms, and it talks how to collect them. How often do you need to inoculate? Well, that's the beauty. You need to inoculate once when you're building it, and that's it.
You're using IMO 4 or 3
IMO 4
with soil?
with soil, yep. Because essentially you're trying to recreate a soil environment, and you have to have that sect there. And those that took the first class understand, what we're trying to do with this system is recreate a forest floor. What happens on a forest floor? A whole lot of stuff. Lots of decomposition very, very quickly. Fermentation happens on a regular basis on forest floors. Waste from animals come in, bring in nutrients, microorganisms quickly break that down, they break down leaves and materials, everything starts moving downward, right? Moves down into the soil, becomes humus, it becomes soil organic matter, and goes into the soil. What we're trying to do is recreate that in the piggery, in the pig pen, and having that same level of decomposition in the forest happening right beneath the pig's feet. So, Talks about how often do we need to inoculate, what kind of green materials need to be layered in there, and I'll go over that in 1 second. And do we need to clean out the pens? What does it say there? The system does not need to be cleaned. You never need to go in and shovel pig poop. You never need to clean it out. I know a woman in Korea that has this system for 30 years and has never cleaned out her pig pen. In fact, hers smelled more like forest floor than any other pig pen I'd ever smelled, even natural farming, because she had such a rich biological diversity in there. And not only that, her microorganisms have adapted to that little piggery over the last 20 years to be incredibly productive. Okay? And there's a diagram of the layering, but I'll go through that with you guys. And troubleshooting. So go ahead and check out that publication. Highly recommended. And we'll talk a little bit about the layers. Okay, let me go ahead and grab my pad, and I'm going to sit back here, and we're going to draw some pictures here. All right. This. That. All right, I'm going to turn the light up in front so you can see this room. You're falling asleep. I'm watching you. Okay, so we understand essentially that we're raising pigs, right? What we're gonna need to do is start off with the pig pen. The pig pen is going to be a structure that can hold many pig pens, but let's just do a diagram of one pen, and then you can multiply these pens throughout your entire structure if you need. So one pen, I'm not the best artist in the world, but we'll get through this together, I think. So, the pen is exactly this is 4 feet. Got that? 4 feet deep. Everybody read that? Sorry about that if you can't. We're starting out with a 4 feet deep pit. How do you make this? Well, I have people that are using pallets to make this with $40 worth of 2x4s from Home Depot. I have people that are using cinder blocks and cementing them down and making cement walls. I know people that are laying cement if they need to. I know people that are using just plywood and staking it in, making a 4 foot deep pen. Depends on how long you want it to last. If you want a permanent structure, you want this to be an actual production system, but build a permanent structure. Okay? You don't have to put a cement floor in there. You can build cement walls or use cinder blocks, and that works fine, and just keep it down to the soil floor. That's perfectly fine. Okay? This can be on the surface of the soil, or you can dig a hole. I highly recommend don't waste your time digging a hole. Just build a pin 4 feet deep and then a walk up that walks up to that level. Much easier. Okay? 4 feet deep, and there are specific layers starting with the bottom. We have on the bottom, we are putting a thin layer, well, thin is kind of relative, about 3 to 6 inches of biochar. You guys know what biochar is?
No.
Okay. Biochar is a hardwood that is burned in an environment of low oxygen. And it makes a very, very dark black, almost cinder-like coal or ash. How do you make biochar? Well, you can either buy it from Josiah or other people that produce it, or you can make your own. You dig a hole. It needs to be at least 4 feet deep, preferably 6 feet deep. A round hole and wide, with a width of anywhere between 8 to 12 feet. You take hard wood, like mango wood. Actually use any wood, doesn't really matter. But it works better. The biochar is more effective with hardwoods. So if you can get your hands
Too
on,
bad there's a lot of Albizia.
yeah, you know what? Use it. Use it if you can. I know people that use it, and then I know people that go into the lumber yards and just get scrap. And so that's definitely a byproduct. And so they'll go in and get scrap, and they just make sure it's not treated wood. Sometimes they'll even use the treated wood. It doesn't matter, but there's environmental issues and gas.
I'm surrounded by 5E.
Yeah, I mean, the Vive the issue is you have to dry it out. It's not going to burn green.
Yeah.
So it has to be dried woods. I mean, right now there's so many logs laying everywhere in Pahoa that everybody should be taking their truck down there and filling it up. I called Josiah last week. I said, "Gold mine, huh?" And he's like, "Oh man, I haven't stopped running my dump truck for 3 days. Just going around picking up all this wood and piling it up." So you dig a hole and you make sure it's deep. And you throw a good amount of logs and hardwood in there. Basically, you want to fill the hole up. And then comes the fire. You light it on fire and you get the flames going really high and really hot. And once they've become really high and really hot and you start sensing an ash production, a white ash production, it means it's getting too hot and too much oxygen. So you start actually spraying it with water, bringing its temperature down, and you're spraying it with water during the time period that the fire is spreading in the wood. You want the fire to spread to new wood. You want the fire touching all of the wood. At that moment is when we are going to bury it. You get the flames down. You want it down to coals. You want to make sure like every single piece of wood is lit on fire and there's a coal running, there's flames running through it, yeah? And there's coal being produced. Then you bury it. You actually take soil and put it right up over top. I know people that have used a big steel plate. Seems to be much harder to acquire. But they'll lay a big steel plate over the hole and not cut out the oxygen. That's the goal. So a lot of guys will take their backhoe and just grab soil, put it right up over top of this pit. Once all the wood is on fire, it's burning, you then take away the oxygen by adding soil on top, and you let that burn for about a day and a half.
Like making an emu.
It's like exactly like making an emu. Or when somebody makes an emu,
Just go get.
don't bury it.
Oh.
Go get the charcoal out of the emu before they bury it over. Or, people do that, yeah? They fill over their emu. When they're done with their emu, go get that stuff. That's biochar.
Okay.
So if you know anybody that's doing those, it's much easier to acquire that way. So once it's buried over and it burns for about a day and a half, you open it up and you should have black, dark black, cinder, almost crystal-like ash. And that's biochar. Or you can just buy it from Josiah. Because you don't need that much. You only
How
need
much he sells it for?
He sells it by the ton. He sells it by the half ton. I can't give you a price, but I gotta say for the amount of time and effort it takes to make it, it's pretty cheap.
A half ton do one pig pen?
I think you only need, if depending on how big it is, if it's as big as the ones that we're gonna go see, you might need a quarter ton or not even that
It
much.
can't be very heavy.
It's not very
It'd
heavy.
be a lot of volume.
Yeah, it's a lot of volume. One of those big, the big bags like Ginger John has and
Yeah.
stuff, those are half tons.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're still pretty light. So yeah, you just go around, and the goal here, of course, is to do. Oh, I'm sorry. Three to 6 inches. Can you read that? 3 to 6 inches of the biochar over there. Okay? 3 to 6 inches of biochar on the bottom. Then, okay, we'll get to why that's down there in a second. I'll just tell you what the layers are, and then I'll explain why. The next layer that we're going to do are logs. Minimum 6 inches in diameter. You can have big ones on top. They don't have to be small. I'm just kind of.
Green logs, dead logs?
They can be green. They can be dead. They can be albizia. They should be albizia
Yeah.
because we have so much of it. Or if putting the ironwood and stuff in there is great. It works. So pretty much any logs that you can find.
Got ironwood down all around my
Yep.
place too.
Yeah, they came down during the hurricane a lot in Bahia.
So how deep is that?
This is going to be, about 3 feet. That's the about symbol, yeah. About 3 feet. So pretty high, yeah? Most of the 4 feet is logs.
6 inch minimum, did you say? You want big guys in there.
Yeah, 6-inch minimums. So you want something bigger than this, yeah? Next layer. Palm fronds. You want leaves, big tropical leaves with lots of woody lignin in it. So you want the leathery palm leaf. You know, that thick, waxy. We're looking for thick leaves here. And ones that aren't going to break down all that easily. How long does it take for a palm frond to decompose on your driveway? It takes a while. So we're looking for palm fronds or something like that that is a very, very thick leaf. Taro leaf will not work. It's soft and succulent, not going to work. We want the stuff that's woody. Put it this way. If you take it and put it in your mouth, can you snap it? If you can snap it, it's too succulent. Yeah?
Oh,
You need to have something that's like stringy and really hard to break up. Very, very strong type material, and that's why I always say coconut fronds works best. They're readily available. So this will be just one layer of fronds thick, just so you can't see the wood beneath. So that would be anywhere between 3 to 6 inches, right? Three to 6 inches of palm fronds. The next layer is a layer of IMO 4 up near the top above the palm fronds. IMO 4, like I said, is a granular soil inoculant. It comes in like a powdery, like soil, almost like soil-like form. You can make it yourself, which takes a little training. Some people go and buy it from KTA. KTA sells something called IMO-alizer, which is somebody who made IMO at home and bagged it and is selling it to you. And those microorganisms might or might not survive in your area. Now, the microorganisms that are in that bag, I know that it's pretty active, and they do pretty well in this system, so I'm not gonna say don't go buy a bag of imobilizer for this. If you plan on becoming a natural farmer, please, for God's sakes, never buy imobilizer. But if you just need it for this, if you're just doing the piggery, go ahead and go out and buy it, it'll work fine. They sell it at KTA, a couple bucks a bag. You don't need that much.
Well, so what, how thick a thing would you?
1 to 3 inches. On the smaller side, 1 inch, yeah. And the goal here is just inoculation. We're not trying to make a layer of any kind. Final layer. Sawdust and or wood chips. You can go acquire sawdust from the mills or some sort of lumber producing facility. You can use mulch. Don't look at me because I don't want you to use the city stuff. She looked at me, she's like, I get the city stuff. No, you can actually.
Sit it on the side for a while.
Yeah, as long as you compost it. If you go to the city, you know, they have it available, you can go, but please, for God's sakes, take that stuff back to your place and compost it for 3 to 6 months before you use it anywhere on your farm. And if you bring it to your house and you put it in a place to compost, test for fire ants that day. You put out a stick with peanut butter on it, and you make sure that there's no fire ants in there. And if there is, you're going to burn that pile. Or whatever you have to do to get it the hell out of it. Okay, so generally speaking, about 3 inches here. We got that, 3 inches. Make that a little more legible. 3 inches on top. Okay? So you can use wood chips. I like the ones with the big shards of wood in there, yeah. Sawdust works great in this system, but it tends to like percolate through the system and you lose it more regularly. If you can get both sawdust and wood chips and get it on this top layer, that's what's recommended, okay? So what are we dealing with here? Well, you got one of these, right? I told you I'm not very good at it. What is that? So, what happens when you got a pig in this system? Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about what happens. Let's talk about urine. Urine comes out the back of the pig. First thing that happens to the urine, it gets soaked into the wood chips and sawdust on the surface. Okay, what the sawdust and wood chips can't hold in its pores drips downward over the logs, over the palm fronds, over the logs, all the way to the bottom, and gets absorbed into biochar. Why is biochar so awesome? Number one, it has an incredible water holding capacity. It can soak up moisture about 100 times its own weight. So the urine passes through the logs, picks up tons of microorganisms on the way. As it passes through the IMO, gets to the bottom and gets soaked into the biochar. The other cool thing about biochar is it is easily the most appropriate place for microorganisms to inhabit. There is a nutrient source in it, there's a carbon source in it, and there is nooks and crannies and surface area that are comparable to clay surfaces and humus. So place for microorganisms to exist and place for water to absorb. Well, the urine being mostly water and just a little bit of nutrients goes down. The microorganisms that are in that biochar start absorbing the water that's in there. They all need the water that's in it. And then the ones that decompose nitrogen and phosphorus and the things that are in the urine start breaking that material down very, very quickly. Now, if a pig is up there for a very long period of time, the biological and chemical makeup of the microorganisms in that biochar becomes very unique to the number of pigs that are in the pen, the sex of the pig, if she's a female, if she's, has babies or she's weaning or whatever. The urine changes pH and consistency all through these different stages depending on who you are. So who the pig is. So once the microorganisms in the bottom become adapted to this specific set of materials that are going to come down and rain down on them, and they're going to consume them. Okay? What happens when microorganisms break down sulfur and nitrogen and those types of things? Well, you have ammonia gas release. Ammonia gets released, and then you also have sulfur and methane gases that are released. Okay? Those gases are then go up out of the biochar, through the logs, through all the stuff, past the pig, and out through the roof. Okay? The next layer is the logs. Logs are made of what? Lignin. They're made of lignin. Wood is made of lignin. There's only one creature on this entire planet that can consume and break down lignin, and that is fungi. Okay? So what that huge layer of logs is for, it's to have really a food source for fungi in there. The fungi typically, like animals, being more related to animals than plants, fungi consume nitrogen and ammonia pretty readily, just like we do in our food and stuff. So any of the nitrogen gas that's released, any of the ammonia gas that's released, might pool up and get trapped around these fungi who will actually consume those gases, and if those gases touch water, become a water-soluble form of those materials, and they will consume it. So a lot of times before the gas even gets, as it's releasing, goes past the logs, it gets consumed. So you have byproducts from the microorganisms being consumed by more microorganisms. The urine at the top that soaked into the wood chips and the sawdust, right? You got a little nice wet puddle, right? Well, the fact that the IMO is just below that, what happens is, as soon as you make the system, that IMO inoculates that wood chips and the sawdust. And microorganisms begin breaking down that urine-stained or urine-soaked wood chips very, very quickly. Actually, within 1 hour. You have so many biological entities at the top of this system that the urine that gets soaked up right up top gets turned into ammonia gas almost instantly because it gets consumed by microorganisms. So that's the urine. Let me find a nice brown color here. Don't give me brown, do that. There you go. So then what do we talk about here? We got the feces. Oh, the nasty feces. That does not go trickling through the system, right? Well, some of it does. Some of it's a little wet. But for the most part, it sits right on top. Why do flies go for feces? There's a nutrient source, yes, but there's also a water source for the maggots to use to create enzymes to break down the feces. If you take the water out of the feces, then you do not have flies. What happens is the poop comes down, the IMO spores jump on the poop as soon as it's released, and within an hour or two becomes crusted over with a nice white, almost powdered sugar layer of fungi and bacteria. That shell works its way inward over the course of about an hour or two and robs the entire pile of feces of moisture. Then the pig walks around the pen, stomps it into the material, causes it to being broken down even more. So if you don't have water in the feces, you don't have flies. And because the microorganisms that are in the top layer are so rich and diverse, they are starving for water at all times, and they jump on that very quickly. So within 3 hours of release, typically we've observed in the pig system traces of less than 10% of the original material being observable in the environment. Now here's another kicker. You know what the pigs do? They eat the feces because it's got nutrients on it, the fungi. What do pigs eat in nature? Fungi, roots, and insects. They actually eat it and consume it, so if there's any left over, they go in and they clean it up. It's gone. And so some of the liquid in the feces goes down, trickles down, goes over the whole system, and goes down to the bottom and gets trapped down there. Okay? As long as you don't have too many pigs in this system, there's a limit to the amount of pigs that you can have in a pen. And we'll talk to Mike about that. He's given me different numbers here and there, because he says one thing and then he'll go somewhere and somebody has more than he says and it works fine. So he's, this is still a pioneering level of analysis of this stuff. But as long as you have the right number of pigs in there, and you watch the water, you cannot have any rain leakage into your pig pen. This system will turn anaerobic and be the stinkiest fly-producing system you've ever seen within 12 hours if you get a leak in this thing. Now, how do you do that? Well, you get a nipple. You have a nipple system on the watering for your pigs. So the pigs, they will walk up to it just like a feeder on a hamster, and they drink from it, and there's very little drippage. Don't have trough water systems. Rain is a big deal. So the thing has to be made so that it does not get rain down in that bottom layer. Once that biochar is saturated with rainwater, the whole thing goes to pot. It's done.
If this is assembled on the ground,
Yep.
oh, you got the plastic sheet.
Oh, I totally forgot about
the
that, guys.
plastic sheet.
I'm sorry. I forgot about your plastic sheet.
That biochar is just gonna soak.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Here you go. Here's your plastic sheet. There it is. Look at that. There it is.
So it does go to the top of your walls.
It goes to the top of the walls, right?
Like a swimming pool liner.
Yeah. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. Yes, I didn't mean to confuse anybody. Everybody knows that there's a plastic layer there before we start the whole thing. I do apologize. I got way too ahead of myself. Okay, so yeah, plastic liner, 60 mil minimum. It has to be tucked right? So that the corners aren't, folded and they're bleeding into one corner. It has to be big enough where it fits in the entire pit.
No seams.
No seams. Definitely no seams. And you want to have it one piece going from edge to edge all the way up the wall. I'm sorry, guys. I apologize. Should have said that first. So that's the beautiful part about the system is we don't have to lay down cement floor. You could build this in your backyard on soil right there and have a piggery right there, no problem. Okay, so back to where I was. Okay, so the feces come out and they stomp in it, they eat it and all that stuff. Here's the best part about the system. We not only inoculate their pen, but we inoculate their food, their feed with IMO and lactic acid bacteria. And what that does is we inoculate their stomachs with the same microbes that are going to be breaking down the material when it comes out their butt. So a lot of those microorganisms tend to actually go through the whole system and will the poop is inoculated when it comes out. So talk about decomposition really fast. A lot of those microorganisms are lactic acid bacteria microorganisms. The most dominant microorganism in your gut, in a pig's gut, is lactic acid bacteria. So you're actually inoculating the feed with microbes that are already in the gut, so the microbes pass right through the whole system, going hi to all its friends, and then coming out the other end perfectly unscathed, because the whole system is full of their microbes. Yeah? So we inoculate their feed. So when we, typically at this piggery that we're going to go visit, we feed them sweet potato or papaya. We ferment it beforehand, so that's 3 or 4 days where we take the material and we spray it with lactic acid bacteria, inoculate it with IMO, and let it rot. Doesn't really rot, it becomes fermented. Lactic acid bacteria being the end result of fermentation. It's the last thing that's left after things ferment, and so the food is just laden with this lactic acid bacteria, and then also a lot of the IMOs that you collected. Fungi being one of the natural sources of protein and carbohydrates for pigs in nature, why would you deprive them of that? Not only that, but biggest issue for a lot of pig farmers is protein. If you can grow your own protein on the feed, you take your feed, your sweet potato, and you grow fungus on the feed, you are then supplementing that protein source that you don't have to give grain to the pig now.
If you are supplementing with grain, can you inoculate that?
Yes, please do.
How?
You just take like a 5-gallon bucket, say it's a 5-gallon bucket, take your grain feed, and you take lactic acid bacteria, which is diluted to 1,000 to 1 to fresh water, and you spray it all over it until it becomes kind of like oatmeal,
Okay.
right? And you can either feed it to them right then, or you can let it ferment.
I've been letting it ferment overnight.
Overnight's good. You don't want to go more than that with the grain
A
feed.
little bucket, and I throw in a lot of smashed guava, grass clippings,
Yep.
and pellets. Just
Mhm.
regular,
For the chickens.
Where's your
Yeah.
source?
and put in lactic acid and a little bit of that fish stuff and calcium.
Yeah, sure. The fish stuff's probably all it's doing is attracting them. There's enough nitrogen in there already. They're probably going, that smells like bacon.
It's warm, and then I pour it out in the pen, and they
Yeah.
like to have a warm meal.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, true.
Where are you getting your milk to make your lactic acid from? Foodland?
The store.
Okay.
Or you can get it from a farmer. I mean, it's highly recommended to use non-pasteurized milk, but if you're using pasteurized, it works just fine. Just gotta watch your temperature, right, guys? Last time I made it in yogurt.
How many gallons of milk per week per pig?
Put it
or
this way,
something?
with a half a gallon of milk, I can make 2 jars like this, and being diluted to 1,000 to 1, that's a half a teaspoon per gallon. So 2 of these things.
So the expense of your milk to make your lactic acid bacteria is pennies.
Pennies.
Okay.
It's not even pennies, it's less than
That was
pennies.
the question
I
I
mean,
had for today. So-
and that's the beauty of natural farming is everything that we deal with is pennies.
Cheap.
Even if you have to buy the mill run from the store and you buy it, it's $10 a bag. And you can inoculate with just maybe 200 pounds of it, which will cost you 60, 80 bucks.
I bought 4 bags and a 50-pound bag of brown sugar, and I think my total
60.
bill was like $80.
Mine was,
Okay.
$100, something like that.
And that is enough material for him to farm his entire property. Easily, inoculating 2 or 3 or 4 times with this material. So when I say to farmers, when I do my consultation services, I can lower your cost of farming by 60 to 80%. They go, what? Can you break it down for me? And I have to put it out on paper. Okay, so how much did you spend on fertilizer and crushed coal last year? Puts the numbers down. I just cross it out. Okay, I just saved you 60 to 80% on your farm. Oh, and water retention just doubled in your soil, so let's add a little bit more. So it's because you're trading, and I mentioned this in the other classes, you trade time for money spent. Yeah, it takes a little bit of extra time to make these materials, but you only need to make them once a year. So you set aside a weekend, bring a couple friends over, show them how to do it, You make a big vat of this stuff, and then you're good for a year, or 2, or 3, depending on how much you make. So, people basically just have to, why would you go to work at a farm picking and growing and selling and distributing and packaging to make money to buy amendments? Why not just not do all that and spend a lot of time making amendments, and then you can go visit with your family on the weekend.
Spend that extra money on baby toys.
And baby toys and such, right? Okay. So this is the layering, and in that CTAR write-up that I gave you the link to, it has a pretty good schematic as well of what's going on here. Everybody understands the layer, and of course you want to put fencing around the top. Otherwise the pig's standing right there and it'll just walk off the ledge. So you want to make sure that you're then enclosing the 4-foot area. So usually the pens are a total height of 6 to 7 feet. Okay? And then like I said, you make a walk up to go up to the 4 feet, a little bit of 2x4s and some wood, no worries. Or you can dig the hole or put the system in the ground. The issue is if you have to take the system apart, it's a lot easier to do it on a raised system. I found trying to get all the stuff out of the hole is logs, taking the big logs out of the hole, it becomes cumbersome. Much easier to do it on a raised area where you can get a backhoe or something in there if you need to pull stuff out. Okay, so those are the layers. And what else did we have to talk about?
So we have to go to the UH, the Komohana UH, to get the info that you shared with us earlier?
I gave you the links. So, I didn't give you the links because you don't have a copy of this, but I can email you the PDF of this PowerPoint presentation. Or do you just want to write them down? It's up to you.
Okay, you got it again? You want to flash that again?
Flash drive, what's that?
No?
Who uses those? Hold on. Here, let me put up the websites for you guys. There you go.
Nothing wrong with using treated lumber to build your frame as long as it's
No.
isolated from your IMO pile by metal or plastic. Or
I would recommend it.
Okay.
You want to make sure that you're going to have a longer
Yep.
life on your wood. At the same time, I don't recommend using wood. If you're going to build a system, I say
Yeah.
use the cinder blocks. It's
Okay.
cheap and it holds. It stays around.
I see roofing panels. being-
Yeah, roofing, the corrugated roofing
Yeah.
panel.
I got that.
You got that one? Is there any other publications you guys want to see that you can really just find them online if you need to. Got them all bookmarked. Here's that dry litter system. Oops. If you want the dry litter system one, here it is.
And then as far as replenishing your top layer dry matter, that's just putting in the wood chips
Wood
periodically.
chips, that's all you're gonna do. Every once in a while, if you're not on it, the pigs will start digging and they'll take a log and pull it up, and then you just gotta go in and put it back down. You'll notice, I think at the piggery, there's one side of it that they've had issues where the sows get in and keep flipping the logs up, and I think it's because they're using too small logs. Some of them are this wide and they're still too small because these sows are moving around, man. They're getting comfortable, making things ready. So, I want to get you guys plans for this, but Mike has them and he never got them to me. So when he's up there, maybe we'll ask him for the plans, and then if not, you can make an appointment with. I would prefer, okay, if you want to go further with this, I want you to make an appointment with Mike, because he'll want to come out to the property and do an evaluation and show you what's the best approach. He has tons of different kinds of plans, and I will guarantee get you plans from him and email them to you as part of this class, okay? I guarantee I'll get those to you, but he was supposed to bring me copies, and and he didn't bring them, but maybe he's got them up there. So by the end of the day, you will have at least the piggery right up in the plans that we have. It's probably best to get tangible, like the paper versions though. What it is essentially plans that were put up, the plans for the piggery that we're gonna go see, other plans for smaller operations, and then all the permits and all the things you need to get, and it has examples of all that. So, but it's easier if Mike's holding your hand along the way.
So to build one of these, you do need to pull a permit with the county?
Well, if it's less than 600 square feet, you don't need a permit, because structures are
Or if you're
considered
amending an existing structure?
On ag land, that's 1,200 square.
1,200 square feet.
If
I
it has
think
no-
Mike's still
no
telling me
plumbing,
it's 6.
no electricity,
I
1,200
think
feet
it,
on ag,
because it's
600 on
plumbing,
residential.
because you have the watering system for the pigs. But yeah, as long as you don't need a permit for anything under 600, and he's referencing something about 1,200. But I know that you'd have to have some sort of watering system.
There's a new rule, I worked in planning department.
Yeah.
We deal with building, it was last year.
Oh, it's
Because
new.
inspectors were going out so much for what was to them a waste of time. I got to inspect a tool shed.
Yeah.
It hasn't had electricity, doesn't have plumbing, nobody's gonna live in it, it's a tool shed. Make it any way you want, you know, why are we making permits? So they changed the rule, because we don't have enough inspectors on the island to be proactive about anything.
Yeah, exactly.
We only respond to complaints.
Yeah. Okey doke.
Oh,
And-
question that occurred to me when you were talking about the unique kinds of microbes that will start growing underneath a sow as opposed to a boar or something like that.
Yeah.
When you recycle, when that sow goes to market or that boar goes to market, you want to put another boar in the boar pen?
You want to re-inoculate with IMO and put another
But you want
layer
to
of...
make sure it's the same sex or something?
It doesn't matter, because you're going to re-inoculate, you're making there's a whole tour bus of new guys coming in, and then then you have a new pig come in, and they're all going to re-establish themselves based upon what's going on upstairs.
So the only thing you have to do when this pig goes to market and the new piggy comes in is re-inoculate.
You might even not even have to re-inoculate, but I would, only because you have to redo the top layer anyway.
Right.
So I would just get in there
And
and
that's for the
sprinkle.
IMO granular?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and then of course you want to put more wood chips and stuff.
Yeah.
You consistently want to keep putting wood chips down, because they're going to decompose, and then eventually you'll be down to palm fronds, and that's bad. So make sure you gotta get in there with a stick every couple months, and make sure you got plenty inches of layers of that, and then you're on.
You gotta sift down into all the empty space between the logs.
It doesn't. It doesn't. Because there's so much bacteria in the system, and bacteria makes a very sticky enzyme when it does decomposition, and everything below the below the IMO layer is got this sticky biological resin on it, and it just stays. It's like a glue that they produce. Okie dokie, we're ready to go for a drive. Okay, let's let everybody use the restroom and all that stuff right over here. In about 10 minutes, we'll meet out there, and we'll go for a drive up to... Let me get the directions out. Give me a couple seconds to find it, and I'll put it up on the board. Duponte. Here it is. You guys know where the J. Hara store is? Okay, so it's just past that. Just past the Filipino graveyard.
Oh,
Okay.
just past the Filipino graveyard.
Yeah, and then you come to the loop, and it's the second entrance. So, Highway 11 towards Volcano. First down? Yeah.
Go past all of them, first cutoff.
Yeah, you go past the J. Hara store, will be on your left. a la loop, you're gonna go through the, a la loop being the first end of the loop, right, and it comes around again, we're gonna hit the end where it comes around. So you have to go through the first, past the first street that says a la loop.
Yeah.
You're gonna pass the Filipino graveyard, which will be on your right side. It has a sign that says Filipino graveyard, can't miss it. And then when you come to the second a la loop,
You're gonna turn left.
turn left.
So you turn left on the second.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
you could hit that then.
And then we're gonna go up to Kang's Farm, which is up the driveway through a cast iron gate. And the gate should be open.
Where, what? Kang's Farm.
Yeah. If you put Kapolai Street in your Google Maps on your smartphone, it will take you straight there.
Couple
Put what in? I'm sorry.
This one, Kapolai.
Okay.
That's what I do.
Kang's Farm is on the first right. And that is Kapolai Street.
Yeah. I have, I've yet to have anybody not make it
Okay.
with these directions, so. You still have another one of these left?
So you're not actually turning on the second hollow loop?
Yeah, you are.
You are.
Yeah.
And then just go straight in?
Pass on highway. What does that mean? When you come to the second hollow loop, cut off on the left,
Yeah.
go pass on highway? Go past?
Yeah, okay,
Turn
right.
left.
Okay, so you actually go past Ala Loop. You don't turn on Ala Loop.
That's what I'm.
You turn on this street, which is the next street past Ala Loop.
Ah,
You didn't catch that? Okay, sorry,
Okay. The
sorry.
way it's written there.
Yeah,
doesn't make
it's written local style.
I can get that when it's told me, but not when I'm reading.
Or just stay real close behind me and we'll make it
okay.
okay.
Yeah.
Okie doke, and then so this class technically goes till 2 o'clock. I hope to be out of there way before then. Okay?
How far is this?
25 minutes.
Yeah, 20, 25 at the most.
Yeah.
If you can, if you don't mind, fill out that survey now and just assume that the rest of the class is gonna be of the same quality. And then and then I can get those, and I got risk and releases here. Dependent sheet there, this goes here.
This one's probably get rid of the tobacco. I got another 4 of them here.
And please, just help me out, come up with one class you would like to hear about. And we'll see if we can run it. Don't care what it is, doesn't have to be ag-based either.
Was that Mike's cell?
Yeah, I have my cell phone number. Oh, sorry, I just unplugged the projector. Were you looking at that number?
Yeah, I wanted to put it in my phone, sorry. You
Three-
can just read it to me.
345-8066.
3, 4,